All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marissa Lennox. I'm host of the Zoomer on Vision TV. We are exactly 1 week from Election Day, and as always happens when you reach the final stretch, the contest is getting decidedly more interesting. Thank you for gathering here today in Zoomer Hall to hear directly from a man vying to be Canada's next Prime Minister. Thanks to ZoomerMedia, today's event will reach an audience that not only spans across Canada, but across the voting generations, from Zoomers to Millennials to Gen Zs. It's funny how Gen Zs have recently come to refer to themselves as Zoomers. So in our audience, you will see 20, 30, 40-year-olds in with the traditional Zoomer crowd because, as Moses says, we are all Zoomers now. Of course, CARP is live streaming this event as well to its 300,000 members on carp.ca. ZoomerMedia is also covering today's event live across Canada thanks to our digital teams at BlogTO and The Peak in Toronto, Daily Hive in Western Canada, Curiosity in Alberta, and Everything Zoomer, which serves the interests of the 45-plus demographic across the country. We are also broadcasting today's event live, traditional style, on Zoomer Radio, AM 740 in downtown Toronto, 96.7 FM. In all, Mr. Poilievre's message will reach many of the 18.5 million plus Canadians ZoomerMedia speaks to every month through all of our media platforms. I also want to acknowledge the outside media outlets covering this event. Your reporting ensures that the substance of today's discussion reaches Canadians well beyond this hall. And that is why today's discussion matters. You're here because you care about the future of this country, about your freedoms, your finances, and your retirement security. Now, before we bring on the speaker you've come to hear, it is my pleasure to introduce someone who truly needs no introduction in this room. Most Canadians know Moses Znaimer as the founder of City TV, CP24, Much Music, and Music Plus, channels that defined the media tastes of the boomer generation. Today, Moses is a relentless advocate for Canadians as we age, as the chairman of CARP, and as the founder of ZoomerMedia. This entire gathering and the company and advocacy behind it exist because of his vision. Please join me in welcoming Moses Znaimer.
So thank you, Marissa. Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you, Mr. Poilievre. I mentioned this to you before we came out here. I haven't worn a suit in 10 years, but I've got my sincere gray flannel on to mark the gravity and importance of this occasion. So given all that you still have to do and all the many places you still have to go, we take it as a big deal that yesterday you were in BC, today you are here to introduce yourself, perhaps to reintroduce yourself, your party, your program to a packed room full of Zoomers, old and young, at a special meeting called here by the Canadian Association of Retired Persons in Zoomer Hall. What makes your appearance here appropriate even more so than usual is that 10 years ago at a similar meeting and in this very spot, just 3 weeks to go before the election that would unexpectedly catapult him into office, Justin Trudeau introduced himself to Canadian seniors and offered up his proposals for Canadians as we age. At that moment, as the leader of a discredited party that had spent many years in the doghouse, he was running third behind a conservative government and an NDP official opposition. On top of that, generally speaking, and especially at that time, as people get older, they tend to develop more conservative attitudes. And maybe because of that, the Conservative Party of Canada began to take the senior vote somewhat for granted. Perhaps the most shocking example of that disregard was the surprise announcement by Prime Minister Harper and his Minister of Finance, Flaherty, at Davos that their government was going to push the age of OAS eligibility from 65 to 67. That bombshell did not go well. Not the idea, and especially not the way in which it was sprung, without warning or discussion, and in front of a foreign venue at a gathering of the so-called global elite. So the Liberals seized that opportunity, and they came here to CARP at the Zoomerplex and announced to our gang of engaged older voters what they intended to do if elected. They said they would roll the 67 back to 65, and for good measure, they threw in another $1,000 a month in support for low-income seniors, and that went over very well. Now, a facile reading of that 2015 election attributes the come-from-behind victory to the fact that Justin brought in younger voters, and there is some truth to that. But the deeper truth is that older demos vote in much larger numbers than younger ones, and that it was his newfound ability to move the much bigger older vote that moved Justin's needle towards victory. Well, here we are, 10 years later, and this time it's the tired and divided Liberals who are in power. The Conservatives are now the challengers, and it's time for the Canadian Conservative coalition to come by here and seek the Zoomer vote by offering ideas, proposals, clarifications at a moment when the age of OAS eligibility still seems to be an open question, and people are asking why the 65 plus can't have the same vital supports that now exist for the 75 plus. If that talk and those commitments in 2015 started a shift of seniors away from the Conservatives and contributed to a groundswell that brought an upset victory, then is it not possible that the speech that you're about to give and the commitments that you're about to make might shift the attention of older demographics back to the Conservatives? Is it not possible that lightning might strike a second time and perhaps we could pull off another upset victory that starts right here and right now? We know, Mr. Poilievre, that you, should you win, would up the amount that seniors can earn or save without attracting taxes, because your party has already announced those platform points at the start of the campaign, but in the hurly-burly of the campaign, they went largely unnoticed. So we'd like to hear more about that from you, and perhaps any additional thoughts that you may have had in this vein. For example, might you commit not to roll back the rollback? And is it possible that you might even commit to leave OAS and GIS entitlements where they stand today? Now, Zoomers don't want you to think that we are only interested in our own bread and butter and what's just in it for ourselves. We're concerned about society at large. We're concerned about the cost of living, about housing, about home care, and particularly about the crime in the streets and the connection between that crime, the alarming growth in that crime, and the reckless, cynical immigration policy which has brought to our shores populations marinated in hatred of the West, hatred of Jewish people, and who brazenly, repeatedly display their bile in a fashion that is a stain on Canadian democracy. We'd like to hear you address that. And finally, Mr. Poilievre, if you would permit me one personal comment. It's widely known that your handlers have been holding back your natural exuberance in order to project an image of gravitas and restraint, but I think they may have gone too far. I mean, really, is it necessary to be as boring as Mr. Carney. In order to prove that you can be a leader. I believe that Canada is ready for a passionate statement from a passionate leader who can evoke the country we all love and answer the simple question that is on everyone's lips. What happened to Canada? Where did it go? What happened to the decent, democratic country we had and could still recognize as recently as 10 years ago? What and who is responsible for those 10 lost years, and how should they be held accountable? To answer these questions, I am honored, I am pleased, I am chuffed to now welcome the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, the applicant for the role of Prime Minister of Canada, Pierre Poilievre. And like I said, Pierre, let her rip.
Thank you very much. Wow, what an introduction. Moses, that wasn't the introduction I wrote for you. What a show. How do you follow that act? Isn't that incredible? Well, the legendary Moses Znaimer has not had the success that he's enjoyed for no reason. The creativity, the audacity, the pluck, and the wordsmith are all still well intact. And it's a privilege to be here with your incredible group of Zoomers and Boomers and CARP members. I know we're supposed to be addressing the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, which brings back memories for me, Moses, from my very first campaign event. I was out, what do you do when you want to run for office? The first place you go to is a senior's home. Because of course, as Moses said, seniors have a habit of voting. And so I remember I arrived and we'd been making a little bit of noise around the community, so I thought maybe I was getting well known and maybe they'd already recognized me. So I walked in the door, very proud, chest puffed out. I walked up to a resident in the senior's home and I said, "Do you know who I am?" She said, "No, but if you ask the nurse, she'll tell you who you are." So anyway, that was a great start to my career. We also have here some incredible champions. They're far too young to be called seniors. We have Vladislav Lizan, we have Francis Lavoie from the Davenport riding, we have Diana Filippivo, we have Anna Roberts and Nicola Pham, who are also part of our Conservative team to bring change in the forthcoming election. And really what this election is about is change. You asked where our country has gone and why we no longer recognize it. That's a question I get all the time. People look around and they say, this is not the country I grew up with. They say we don't recognize the crime, the cost of living. They worry about their kids' future. Many retired people get phone calls, panicked phone calls from their middle-aged or younger children asking if they could even stay in Canada after the housing costs have more than doubled and the paychecks no longer keep up with the rising demands of food, taxes, and everything else. They feel endangered in their streets as crime and chaos have ravaged communities and rampant and roving anti-Semitic riots increasingly shatter communities and terrify innocent people. And they ask, where did the country go? How did it fall apart? And how can we put the pieces back together? But before I tell you what I'm going to do to fix the problems that the next government will inherit from the Liberals, I have to tell you why and who I am, what motivates me, what's inside that will thrust me forward and drive my decisions at the big desk, should Canadians give me that responsibility. I don't come from a famous or wealthy background. I was born to a 16-year-old single mom. She put me up for adoption to a couple of school teachers from Saskatchewan who had started anew in Calgary. And you know, from that humble place, we had a lot of hardship. Our folks lost. My mother had been scrimping and saving through her 20s. She managed to buy a home and then 2 other rental properties. And then along came 18% interest rates, and they lost everything. And so we had to start from scratch. Those are my earliest memories. My parents stressed, sometimes fighting, worried about how they'd pay the bills. My dad trying to make his old Oldsmobile function, even though it was always falling apart. But they taught me during those hard times that this was a country that made a promise. Very simple deal. It's not kind of the American dream, which is kind of something you wake up from. A promise is actually way better than a dream. A promise is a contract. You do this, you get that. And that deal in Canada was very simple. You work hard, you get a nice life in a beautiful, affordable house. You get to live on a safe street. And when all that's done, you get a peaceful, tranquil retirement, watching your kids and your grandkids enjoy the same promise. That is what I understood Canada to be. And that's the thing that makes me most proud to be Canadian. And what we have seen over the last 10 years is that promise is broken. Our young people can't afford homes anymore. We have Toronto now as the second most expensive housing market in all of North America. In fact, the only more expensive market is Vancouver, also in Canada. In fact, in Toronto today, it takes 29 years for the average family to save up for a down payment. Remember, you used to pay off the mortgage in 25. Crime has risen. Violent crime is up 25%. Food bank use up over 100%. Inflation has carried out an all-out assault on the pensions and savings of our seniors. Increasingly, our elderly are unable to pay. They have to choose between eating and heating, and they're afraid to go outside because of the dangers that now lurk in their streets, including in communities where they used to feel comfortable simply leaving the door unlocked. But that's the bad news. The good news is there's nothing wrong with this country that we cannot fix by the foundations that came before us. Getting back to the common sense principles, the back to basics ideas of living within our means, leaving more in the pockets of the people, a government that is servant and not master, accountability for criminals, locking up the worst offenders so that we can be safe, restoring an immigration system that puts our country and its people first and brings in newcomers only in numbers that we can house, employ, and care for, and only by selection of those that are a good fit for our country. These are all basic things we did for generations with no serious controversy. And that is how the Canadian Promise was born. We're a country that has always been practical in solving its problems and determined to give the next generation a better life than the one came before us. The Canadian Promise, though, of which I speak, is worthless if it is not granted first and foremost to our seniors, the people who built this country. And today, our seniors are struggling to make ends meet, struggling to get ahead, and or often called upon by their children for help with down payments on homes, money that you worked so hard to build up, equity that you poured into your property that is now, frankly, called upon by your kids so that they can have a chance at a home, something that you didn't have to get from your parents back then because hard work at the time bought you that home. But it means that we as a government need to ensure that our seniors are rewarded for their hard work, their thrift, and their savings. And we have tangible plans to do it. First and foremost, let me say clearly and unequivocally, Conservatives will preserve the age of retirement for CPP, OAS, and GIS at age 65, period. We will also protect pensions. It was our party that put forward private members' legislation to ensure that in the case of large-scale corporate bankruptcies, that pensioners always get 100% paid out before the bondholders get their share of the bankrupted, liquidated assets. Furthermore, we recognize that our seniors have a lot of wisdom and ingenuity and mentorship to offer the next generation in our workforce. Some seniors make the decision to stay in the workforce. They enjoy working, they stay busy, it helps them contribute. They are under high demand because they know things that the next generation does not yet know. And I know when you turn 65, Moses, there'll be a lot of demands on you to stay in the workforce. It'll be a little while before that day comes, but nevertheless, it will indeed. So you'll be very happy with the next policy announcement I have, and it is this, that a Conservative government will honor and reward the hard work of seniors by keeping your first $34,000 of earnings completely tax-free. Right now, we have a system that punishes work. There's this incredible meme I love to go back to of a kid in a park next to his dad, and the kid is bawling his eyes out. And it's after he'd asked his father, what is an income tax form? And his dad said, well, it's like your school report card, except the opposite. The harder you work, the worse you do. And that is true for nobody more than seniors. Seniors who work get clawed back on their benefits, then they pay payroll tax and income tax. And in some income levels, they actually end up worse off by earning the next dollar. When you combine all the clawbacks and all the taxes, they're getting penalized, actually paying a fine to society for the crime of hard work. No good deed goes unpunished sometimes. But by allowing seniors to earn $34,000 tax-free, that's $10,000 more than the current limit, our seniors will be able to keep more of that dollar, and they will also be able to keep about an extra $1,500 in their pockets above and beyond what they earn right now. Furthermore, we will be cutting income tax by 15% on the lowest bracket, meaning your average retired person or worker will pay 15% less federal income tax. A couple with an average, with pensions or retirement income in the neighborhood of 50 grand, will save about $2,000, allowing them to pay their bills, perhaps enjoy a little better vacation, and keep the bills at bay. We will also, for those seniors who want to continue to grow their savings for a longer period of time, we will allow you to keep your RSPs for an extra 2 years, during which time you can compound and grow your savings. We all know that the government's going to get its pound of salt in the end anyway. But in the meantime, why not allow you to roll over and compound your savings? Which brings me to my next two proposals, which I believe are fundamentally patriotic. As one of the best ways we can stand up to a foreign leader who wants to take our jobs is to sell our investments in America and bring it home and invest here in Canada. And we've got some policies to reward that. One, we will allow you to contribute an extra $5,000 a year to your TFSAs if all that money goes to Canadian companies. Two, after the recent attempt by the Liberal government to hike capital gains tax, an attempt that they will, despite their sudden last-minute claims to the contrary, reintroduce if, God forbid, they're re-elected, we will go in exactly the opposite direction. We will pass the Canada First Reinvestment Tax Cut. Very simple principle for this tax cut. It is this: you'll pay zero capital gains tax as long as all the proceeds of the sale are reinvested in Canada. Bring it home. And we will axe the federal sales tax on new homes so that you can save up to $65,000 in federal tax on a housing purchase. We'll incentivize municipalities to cut their development charges by $50,000 so that we can knock down the tax bill on housing by about $100,000. Now, some people say, well, this is just an issue for the young and the middle age. That's of course not true. Our seniors need housing as well. The cost, even if they are now renting, the cost of building gets passed on in the rental bill, and it therefore gets passed on in our seniors' homes, because seniors' homes are, after all, real estate. We need to cut taxes and red tape so that we can build more housing for all ages across the country. And on that front, the reality is, this is, as Pythagoras said, numbers rule the universe. If we add people at 3 times the rate that we add homes, we're going to have a shortage. It's a very simple equation. And the Liberals have put us on a radical, out-of-control track of population growth, driven by a crazy agenda they call the Century Initiative, this idea that Canada needs 100 million people, which has, frankly, overcrowded our housing, our social services, and our job market. This has been very good for large multinational corporations because they can use the incoming labor to drive down wages for Canadians. But it has been terrible for the working class people of this country. And I don't blame the immigrant population whatsoever. Immigrants come here for the same reason that we all want to stay here. It's an opportunity for a better life. The blame goes to the government that made the decision. And there's no doubt they will continue down this path. A Conservative government will dispense with the Century Initiative. We will end the abuse in the international student system and the temporary foreign worker system. We will end fraudulent refugee claims. And finally, we will cap immigration numbers with a mathematical formula that ensures that we never again add people at a rate faster than the rate we add houses, jobs, and healthcare services. But in order to do all this, we actually need to generate the savings and the revenues in order to pay the bill, because all of this stuff costs money. So I made it clear that my government will be cutting waste. We will cut bureaucracy. We'll cut back on foreign aid that goes to dictators, terrorists, and global bureaucracies. In passing, there will be no more money for UNRWA to help Hamas. That will end. And just yesterday, I announced that we will bring the consulting budget of the Canadian government back to the level it was 10 years ago, which the Parliamentary Budget Officer confirms will save taxpayers $10 billion a year. Money in your pocket. We'll bring in a dollar-for-dollar law that runs the government's finances the way my mother ran our finances at home. My mother is a little lady who likes coupons, and she used to go over. She's the kind of lady who would drive clear across town to get a 25% off on beef on a bun, and she could really stretch a dollar. But unfortunately, governments don't have any incentive to do that because they're always spending other people's money. So we're going to bring in a very simple law, and it's the dollar-for-dollar law. Every time a minister comes forward with a new spending initiative, he'll have to accompany it with an equal amount of savings. That means hunting through the bureaucracy to find waste, opting for more efficient ways to deliver outcomes, and capping the cost of government so that we can pass the savings on to you in lower taxes, lower inflation, and lower interest payments on our national debt. That's on the spending side. But we need to grow our revenue without tax increases, and that takes economic growth. Over the last Liberal decade, we've had uncontrolled spending matched by the worst economic growth in the G7. I note that the worst of this growth happened while Mark Carney was Justin Trudeau's economic advisor. He came on in 2020, and in that 5-year period, we have had, in fact, our GDP per capita is smaller than it was before COVID, while the United States per capita GDP has grown by 18%. That means that they have more revenue generated for their programs than we do. We're increasingly having to serve a bigger population with a smaller output of economic growth. How do we turn that around? Well, we have to develop our resources, for one. We should be the richest country in the world. We have the 3rd most oil, the 5th most gas, we're first in uranium, potash. We have the biggest oceanic coastline. We have the 5th most lithium. We have the 2nd biggest landmass anywhere on planet Earth. We have lumber. We have the 3rd biggest supply of farmland. We need to unlock the power of these resources, which means repealing the radical eco-extremist laws that the government has imposed that block us from developing our resources. We need, for example, pipelines to take our energy across this country and over to world markets. Right now, the Liberals have put us in an unprecedented position of weakness. We can't get a single drop. Sorry, we're now getting 97% of our oil goes to the States at a $15 a barrel discount. We're sending 100% of our natural gas to the Americans at a roughly 66% discount. A million metric British thermal units of gas goes for $14 in Europe. We're getting $4 from the Americans. The exact same chemistry. It's not a different product. Why? Well, they've got us cornered. We can't liquefy our gas and ship it anywhere overseas, so we give it to them. They liquefy it, they put it on a ship, and they send it off to the world and triple the price. I mean, that is economic vandalism at its worst. It takes now 17 years to get a mine approved in Canada. So if you have a child today, that child will probably be almost on the verge of voting before a mine would be approved if you applied at the exact same time as that child's birth. Now, you might say, well, I don't work in mining, so why should I care? Well, this is hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth that could be used to fund our healthcare system, to pay for our pensions, and to relieve the burden of taxpayers by increasing the contribution of our resource sector. Resource sector has the highest per capita, the highest per hour GDP output. So when we unlock that resource, we can generate enormous sums of money. So I'm announcing that my government will repeal the anti-energy, anti-resource laws, C-69, get rid of the energy cap. We will approve pipelines, mines, resources. And we will ensure that we can sell to countries other than the United States. Obviously, we are going to start working on day one to conclude a 3rd free trade agreement with the Americans, and we will get a deal that will be fair for Canada and protect our sovereignty, the sovereignty of our land, our resources, our money, our ability to make laws, protect language and culture. That will be achieved. But we can't control the decisions the president makes. What we can control is what we do here at home. And what we need to do is reverse the disastrous liberal economic policies that Mark Carney advised Justin Trudeau to take and that have put us in this terrible position of weakness. After this lost liberal decade, we cannot afford a 4th liberal term of rising cost and crime and a falling economy under America's thumb. We need a change with a new conservative government that will axe taxes, unleash home building and resource development so that we can stand up to the Americans from a position of strength. And that strength will require that we are safe here at home. And increasingly, our population feels in danger of crime. Do you hear about it in your community?
All the time.
Seniors afraid to go outside?
All the time.
Yeah. What are they afraid of?
They're afraid that we're allowing, when I toured with the police officers in York Region, that the police are getting laughed at because the criminals are being let out of jail.
I met a police officer with Anna. His name is Mario.
Right.
he told me he has some very clever criminals that he's been arresting for years. And he said they're very cunning and Machiavellian. But they've increasingly gotten stupid and easy to catch. And so he had one of them in the back of his car. And he said, you know, you used to go to lengths to hide the drugs and the guns. You used to go to parks and bury your contraband. And we used to have to chase you around. Why is it so easy now? He said, because we don't care if we get caught anymore. There is no penalty. It's more hassle to try and avoid capture than it is simply to get caught and to re-offend again and again and again. The source of this problem is C-75.
Exactly right.
The law, it's called catch and release. Here's what the law says. It requires judges to release offenders at the, quote, earliest opportunity and under the least onerous conditions. That is right in the law. You can have 100 prior convictions, and the judge has to release you at the earliest opportunity upon your latest arrest. In Vancouver, they had to arrest the same 40 offenders 6,000 times. That's 150 arrests per offender per year. I mean, you basically have to be doing crime all day, every day, to get caught every second day. I mean, these guys, they're hardworking. They're not unionized. They have no benefits. They do get accommodation. They go to the Hotel California, which means they check out, but they never really leave. And so they're back out on the street reoffending. So my plan will repeal C-75 and bring in mandatory jail, not bail. Jail, not bail. We will also repeal C-5, the house arrest law. Any car theft, Anna, where you come from?
The car theft in my riding alone has gone through the roof. It's up 40%.
40%?
Yes.
Yeah, I was out in your area. I met a waitress, and she told me that she was able to cut one of her jobs. She was working one full-time job, 2 part-time jobs, exhausted all the time.
That's correct.
So she was able to scrimp and save, and then she woke up one morning, walked out her front door, and her car was gone, yeah, which the insurance wouldn't cover.
That's right.
So she had to go back to taking another job so that she could buy herself a car that she needs to get to work. This insanity has to stop. You know, house arrest for car theft, so you can sit around watching Netflix in your living room or playing Grand Theft Auto. This is the insanity that has led to, you wonder, Moses, why we have so much craziness in our streets. This is the reason, because there are no consequences. I will repeal C-5. There will be no more house arrest for repeat offenders. We will repeal C-83, the law that allows Paul Bernardo out of a maximum security penitentiary into a medium security penitentiary. In fact, then we will also take action against multiple murderers. Right now, because of a terrible ruling by the Supreme Court, multiple murderers are able to serve only one 25-year life sentence, even if they've murdered 5 or 6 people. There's one offender in Quebec City who killed 6 people, and he's eligible to apply for parole when he's in his 50s. He will serve as little as 4 years per murder. So one human life, according to our justice system, is worth only 4 years. This is crazy. I will use the notwithstanding clause to overturn this ruling and keep mass murderers in prison until they come out in a box. We'll pass a 3 strikes you're out law. 3 repeat, serious, violent offenses will mean that someone will become a dangerous offender, ineligible for bail, parole, probation, or house arrest. They will serve a minimum of 10 years, after which their release will be dependent on perfect behavior, clean drug tests, and learning an employable skill. In other words, if those boxes are not checked, the offender will never get out of jail. We want people to be fully rehabilitated so there is no risk to the public before they are released on our streets. It is just one of the ways that we will take action to stop the crime for change. So we will also secure our borders with high-powered scanners, watchtowers, 2,000 more CBSA officers on the front line, And we will pay for that by canceling the ridiculous gun grab that goes after licensed, law-abiding, trained and tested sport shooters and hunters, the people who are least likely to commit a crime. We know this because criminals don't go and get a license to buy a firearm. That is the purview of our uncles and our grandfathers who enjoy hunting. Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle is not the problem. And we will also ensure that we will put an end to these raging anti-Semitic riots in our streets. This is going to end, Prime Minister. We're going to bring in tougher laws that give massive crippling fines to anyone who's engaged in political vandalism. The fines will be 10 times the value of the damage done. There will be mandatory jail time for anyone who does hate-based vandalism. We will cut the bureaucracy so that our places of worship can get assistance in funding protection against terrorist attacks, so that never again does a synagogue or any other place of worship need to feel afraid that they will be firebombed or shot upon or in any other way attacked. And as for those people who have come to this country on visitor visas and who are then using the privilege of being here as a visitor to go on our streets and terrorize our Jewish community, anyone caught doing that and breaking our laws will be automatically deported from our country. So, we will reinforce our strength as a nation by cutting back foreign aid, back office bureaucracy, and procurement boondoggles. We will put money into frontline military recruitment. We will fill the vacancies. We will buy the best possible equipment for our troops. We will have fighter jets, Poseidon aircraft, new landing strips in the north. I have announced that we will add 4 high-powered icebreakers so that we can reclaim our Arctic waters, and we will open the first Arctic base since the Cold War, CFB Iqaluit. We want to reaffirm our sovereignty on our territory. Our foreign policy will again be principled. No longer will we play the divisive game of the last 10 years, where liberals go and say to one group one thing, and then to another group they say precisely the opposite in the hopes of stoking divisions and then profiting from them. We will defend Israel's right to protect itself and preserve its existence as a Jewish state. And we'll unite our country. We'll unite our country around our common purpose, that when you come here, you're a Canadian first. Sure, you can have cultures and traditions and religions. That's none of the government's business. People can enjoy whatever traditions they like. You can even have political opinions that disagree with your neighbors. That's fine too. There's nothing wrong with squabbling and debating and arguing. But this will be a country where you come and park the violent conflict at the door. If you want to be a Canadian, put our flag first and support all the blessings of this land. We're going to be a nation not of tax collectors and toll masters, of bureaucrats and busybodies, of rulers and rule makers, of gatekeepers and grandees. Instead, we will be a nation of explorers and entrepreneurs, of artists and adventurers, of workers and warriors, of pioneers and patriots, a nation that honors its old, protects its young, secures its borders, upholds its history, rewards hard work and entrepreneurs, and unites its people around one simple promise, that if you work hard, you get a great life, a wonderful retirement, in a beautiful home, on a safe street, protected by brave soldiers, under a proud flag, a country where seniors can look with pride at the achievements of their children, starting new families, and building that promise once again, knowing that the promise that was handed down like a torch from the generations that have gone are going to be handed down to the generations that arrive, so that we can pass on intact the wonder and the beauty that our seniors built and give the same incredible opportunity to our children and grandchildren. That is the promise of Canada. That is what, but in order to do it, it takes change. Vote hope for change, and let's bring it home. Thank you very much.
We're going to start the Q&A portion of this event. The first question comes from Libby Znaimer from ZoomerMedia. Libby, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for letting me have this opportunity. I'm the Vice President of News and host Fight Back and the Zoomer TV and Reddit column. Mr. Poilievre, the most interesting polling question that I've seen frames the motivation as hope versus fear. And the numbers showed that most of the people voting out of hope were voting Conservative, while those who are fearful are voting Liberal. So what's your message to the people who are afraid of what will happen in our future?
Thank you. That's an important question. First of all, I want to say that I feel grateful that my campaign is giving hope to so many people. In fact, that's the #1 comment that I get when I hold my rallies and I go down that, we call it the tunnel of love as we're going in. They say that my plan, my purpose is giving people hope that they can take back control of their lives and live in the country that their parents enjoyed. I think we need to build out on hope. And I think first question I would ask is, what kind of government do you want? Is it one that's driven by hope, or is it one that's driven by fear? I think it's clear that hope is the only way we'll have a brighter future for our families and our people. But I understand that there's a lot going on in the world today, whether it's the unacceptable rhetoric, threats and tariffs of President Trump, or anything else that has legitimately destabilized people. My message to them is that Canada is going to overcome those things. We're going to be a strong, sovereign nation that stands on its own 2 feet, protects its territory and its future for itself. And that the problems we have in Canada, that people are living with in their daily lives, they existed long before the president was reelected. And if we don't fix them, they will be even worse after he's gone. You know, if it was a bad idea to block our energy industry before President Trump's threats, well, it's a god-awful idea now. And the best thing to do is to unlock our energy and take back economic sovereignty. You know, if it was a bad idea to tax our homes, block builders from providing our youth with a place to live before these tariff threats, well, it's a terrible idea now. It was a bad idea to double our national debt and grow our bureaucracy by 50% before these tariff threats. Well, it's an absolutely reckless idea now. All of the things that the Liberals did wrong over the last 10 years are even more dangerous now that our trade is under threat. The solutions are the same as they were before: to unlock free enterprise, lower the taxes to reward work, investment, home building, and energy, unlock our entrepreneurial spirit, cap the cost of government, fix the broken immigration system. All of those things are necessary. In fact, they were necessary before, but they're more necessary than ever. And that's why I'm asking people to vote for hope for a change. Thank you.
Okay, the next question is from Andrew. Where's Andrew in the audience? Can you raise your hand? On that side, all right. Go ahead.
First, I'd like to say thank you for supporting all Canadians coast to coast during this important election campaign. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
Your personal story and humble roots you mentioned during the English debate and again here today resonated with myself and I think many Canadians. I'm a baby boomer. I'm retired. I have 2 children, aged 30 and 33. I'm concerned with my pension and future income being taxed further, but I'm more worried about my kids' future not being able to buy their first home in and around the GTA area. Could you share with us your plans for both seniors' future taxes? You've done that with your speech today, but more so, our millennial children's future to be able to own their own home.
Thank you. Very important question. Why can't we afford homes in Canada? What's the explanation? Let's think about this for a second. We have the most land per capita of any country in the G7. Housing should be cheap because it should be dirt cheap because we have the most dirt to build on. And yet, it's the most expensive in the G7. Housing costs have risen faster in Canada over the last 10 Liberal years than they have in any other G7 country. So we can't blame this on some out-of-control global phenomenon. This is a home-made problem with a home-made solution. The problem is government. 30% of the cost of every newly built home in Ontario today is direct taxes. Sales taxes, land transfer taxes, and development charges, the latter of which are up 1,000% in Toronto in the last decade. 1,000% more. Is it 1,000% more expensive for the cities to build pipes and parks and bridges and roads to service those communities? Of course not. The money is being vaporized by bureaucracy. In Vancouver today, the cost of government baked into every home is $1.3 million. Every newly built home, that's the cost of taxes, charges, fees, consultants, lawyers, etc. And that's why it's the most expensive market in North America. So what's the solution? We have to cut the bureaucracy and the taxes. So my plan will axe the federal sales tax on new homes. I will pay the municipalities half the cost of cutting their development charges by 50 grand a home. This will knock $100,000 of tax off every newly built house. I'll require municipalities speed up permits, free up land, and cut their charges to build 15% more per year. They will have to issue 15% more permits per year if they want federal infrastructure money. We'll sell off 6,000 federal buildings and thousands of acres of federal land to build almost 300,000 homes on government land that is not optimally used right now. We'll train 350,000 young people to go into the building trades, and we'll cap immigration so that never again does our population outgrow our housing stock. In that way, we will add the homes, and in the basics of supply and demand, this will mean people can afford a place to live. On the other side, I'll just point out Mr. Carney is proposing exactly the same policies that Justin Trudeau used to double housing costs over the last 10 years. More government programs, tens of billions of dollars of new agencies and officials in Ottawa. Bureaucrats don't build homes. We need less bureaucracy, less tax, more home building for a change. Thank you.
All right. Next is from Lucas. He's from the Peak. Where's? First, we're going to get to Lucas, so bear with me, please. Thank you. I know, I understand.
Hi there. Over the course of your career, who that you've encountered is most similar to President Trump, and how did you deal with them?
I don't think there's anyone who's quite like him. I mean, I think he's a different cat. But the reality is you have to respond with strength. If you're weak, you show weakness, then he seizes on weakness. And that's why he likes the Liberal Party so much. He said he wants the Liberals to be reelected because they're weak. And he said they'll be easier to deal with. And they've done nothing but project weakness from the very beginning. And so, you know, when we block our own resource sector and give the Americans our energy at a massive price discount, that's weakness. When we raise taxes on our investors so that $500 billion heads south into the American economy, that is weakness. When we fail to protect our borders and our people against American guns by allowing 99% of containers that enter our country to be uninspected, that is weakness. So we need to respond with strength, real strength. And we will do, I will do exactly the opposite of everything that the Liberals have done to weaken our economy and our relative position. We will be a strong economy. We will unleash our resources by improving pipelines, mines, data centers, power stations, export plants to take our resources away from America. We will also bring in axe the capital gains tax on any money that's reinvested in Canada, which will create a powerful incentive to repatriate all the capital that has gone south of the border. I want to bring it home. We'll rebuild our military so that we can stand on our own 2 feet and protect our territory and waters instead of relying on the Americans. And so I have the strength and the plan to stand up for our country and to put our nation first, and that's exactly what we need in this difficult time. Thank you.
Next is from Tracy.
Hi, my name's Tracy Pepe. I'm the ex-chair of CARP Brampton. And I wanted to ask, because the Liberal think tank has been using Generation Squeeze for some information. And they have been suggesting, obviously, to old age security to roll it back, but also to use the taxes on our home equity. So my question to you is, I think you said you are not rolling back old age security, but will you not put taxes on the equity that we have saved in our homes?
2 questions. 1, we will protect old age security, GIS, and CPP. You will continue to get your inflation-indexed benefits starting at age 65. 2nd, we will never allow a tax on home equity, period, full stop. Not going to happen. But you're right to raise the question, because weirdly, the Liberals put a question on your tax form to find out what primary residence you have. I don't know why they need that information. If it's not a taxable asset, then why does the tax department need to know about it? The Liberals have also been using your tax dollars to fund studies advocating a tax on home equity, so that if you sell your home to downsize or move into a senior's home, then you would have to pay full capital gains tax on that amount. That would be a crippling policy decision for our seniors. And just Saturday, Mr. Carney came out with a platform that requires $130 billion of brand new spending above and beyond what Justin Trudeau had already projected. They're pledging to, if you add up Trudeau's planned spending and Carney's new promises, it's $250 billion of new debt that they would add if they're elected to a 4th term. Now, I ask you a question. What happens when the finance officials tap them on the shoulder and says, you're out of money, you need to go find more? Well, they're going to go out and they're going to tax your home equity. They're going to go after your house, and they'll lie and deny, and they'll never admit it before an election. Of course not. But when have they ever, the tax increases Liberals have brought in, when have they ever admitted it before the election happens? They do it after they no longer need your vote, but still need your money. Bottom line is, Liberals will tax your home equity if you give them the chance in this election. We will never let that happen. Your home belongs to you, and when you sell, you should keep every single penny for yourself and your kids.
Sorry, we have a list of people who are asking questions here.
Well, I have a very quick question. Can I ask my question, Mr. Poilievre?
I'm not.
You don't control that.
No,
I don't
sorry,
control
sir.
that.
You, sir.
Oh, I see.
You have
So
to.
when would I be able to ask the question? 3 more?
Let's hear from some different voices.
Hi, my name is Brad Bennett. I'm with Mobile Syrup. We're Canada's leading technology news publication. So my question relates more to connecting Canadians in remote communities to the internet. With the loss of Starlink, sort of the loss amid the recent trade war, that like silver bullet for connecting remote Canadians has kind of been removed. I was wondering if your government has any plans to incentivize the Canadian telecoms to help connect remote Canadians to the internet, specifically high speed.
Yes, we do. And I note that Starlink is not the only satellite company that does that. So satellites are going to be part of the mix, but also too are going to be massive incentives to get the telecoms to start to do to increase the service in remote communities that have, up until now have not had the economies of scale. Our platform will include more powerful incentives to get rural and remote communities connected so that you can start a business without living in a big city, that you can raise a family, educate your kids, and have full, unhindered access to the highest quality data at the fastest possible speed. We also favor more competition among our telecoms. We're going to ensure that there's more options so that our consumers can actually shop around if they're not happy what they get from the biggest providers, because the only way to drive down costs and drive up service is to have more competition, and that's what we will deliver. Thank you very much.
Okay, you can ask your question.
No, after all of our questions are done.
No, John said no.
Okay.
You have no control over who asks questions, right? No ability.
Anybody can ask questions.
Okay, can I ask my question? Then we'll get done.
Marissa, whoever you want to answer the question, I'm happy to take questions from anyone.
Disruptive. We're giving you an opportunity to ask a question now. Go ahead.
Okay, well, that's all right.
Mr. Poilievre,
Yes, sir.
you said something very...
Sir, can you speak here? I'm going to just...
Here, take the microphone so I can hear the gentleman.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Poilievre, you said something very interesting and to me.
Yes.
You twice mentioned anti-Semitic riots. Now, I do remember that in the 30s there was a very large anti-Semitic riot led by Nazis during the growth of the Nazis, and it was in downtown Toronto. I don't see, or I haven't seen, maybe I missed it, where and when the anti-Semitic riots of recent time have happened. Do you remember the places or the dates or times when these anti-Semitic riots that you mentioned took place?
Yes, I can. Happy to. Downtown Vancouver, they had a miniature riot right outside a coffee shop where I was speaking, targeting me because I've been a defender of the Jewish people. They've happened in downtown Toronto. In Montreal, in the late fall, there was an absolute monstrous mob going around smashing windows, lighting fires, and doing Hail Hitler symbols. We've had Jewish daycares attacked. We've had Jewish schools that have bullets fly through their windows in the middle of the night. We've had synagogues firebombed. Well, I just gave you a bunch of examples, sir. And
why are none of those covered in the newspapers?
no, I don't control the newspapers. I don't control the newspapers, sir, and I don't intend to. I don't want to live in a country where politicians control the newspapers. I believe in freedom of speech. But my mission is to, when I become Prime Minister, to ensure that there are no anti-Semitic riots for the newspapers to write about. Let's make this a safe country again.
All right. How about one more round of applause for the Leader of the Opposition, the Conservative Party leader. I'm sure you have a very busy day ahead of you. So thank you for your time. You've been gracious answering all of these questions.